You mentioned it a little bit already, but you've talked about ChatGPT or different AI platforms and how that can help possibly build an itinerary. So tell us a little bit about that.
Technology has advanced to this point now where you literally can ask ChatGPT to plan you an itinerary. So put in your date when you're going to be somewhere, and it'll return some really interesting results for you. I think I've even seen TV advertising around this concept now. So that's something new that you can do if you're, willing to trust it a little bit.
Welcome back to the Money More podcast. I'm Madison Foster.
And I am Ryan Bowling, Director of Marketing at OMB Bank. It is awesome to see you, Madison. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to see you. How are you?
Doing good. We, of course, had a corporate event yesterday, so I got to see you for that. That was a good time. Did you enjoy yourself?
I did. Yes. It's always a good time seeing the whole company. It makes me realize like we just keep getting bigger and bigger. And it's cool to see how many employees we have from each year to the next and how big we keep getting. So that's fun.
Yeah, it is interesting. We, of course, work at a community bank, but as banking just in general across the country expands, we've got employees in multiple states, and it is really interesting to see them all get together. But of course, we've got a topic to get to today. We are talking about budgeting for vacations. I'm curious, do you have either like a favorite vacation you've been on, or do you have a dream vacation, one you're planning for? What do you got?
Nothing on the books. My dream vacation is anywhere tropical. We've talked before. I'm a warm weather lady, so that's what I like. I really like being in or on the water. I like just sitting there and swimming and all the things. So that's like my goal, is to make it to a really pretty beach and be there for a very long time. So that's
plant yourself and stay there.
I'm just going to start a new life. Actually, I want to get out there. What about you?
One of my favorite vacations as a kid was a little bit unexpected. So I'm a cold weather person. I don't mind going to the beach and hanging out, but I also like my vacations to be a little active. And my parents, one time when I was in junior high, decided to take my sister and I, and my cousin went with us, on an Alaskan cruise. So what we did was we flew into Seattle, and we took the train ride from Seattle up to Vancouver, up the West Coast. Took a couple hours. And even me, a restless like 13-year-old, thought, well, this is kind of cool. Like seeing the mountains. It was really scenic. And then the Alaskan cruise was a lot of fun. Actually met a couple people that, thanks to the invent of Facebook, I reconnected with like 15, 20 years later, and now get to see what they're up to that I met on this cruise when I was in junior high. It was really cool. And then our dream trip, we had it planned right before the pandemic hit. We were supposed to go to New Zealand, and then COVID happened, and we still have not got to take it. So it is on the bucket list. We were able to get thankfully, all of our refunds back. It was an expensive trip. Like, we had a lot of what we're going to talk about budgeted, savings accounts. We had everything dedicated to take this trip to New Zealand. We were going to be there for almost 2 weeks, and then it got shelved. Life happened, and that's been 4 or 5 years, but we're going to get there again eventually. And now we're going to talk about how we're going to do that. So
absolutely. Well, New Zealand's on my bucket list as well, but I hope you guys end up getting to go. And maybe you can take your little daughter this time, or just do a mom and dad only trip, maybe. And it can just be a little break. Either way, though, I know you're going to make it out there.
Yes, we will. It will happen eventually. All right. Well, let's jump into our topic today.
Yeah. So obviously everyone loves a good vacation. Everyone loves taking a nice disconnect and a break from work and life and responsibilities. But the unfortunate and the downside to that is that it oftentimes comes with a pretty steep price tag. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about a variety of different ways to save on vacations and how to plan for them so that you are as stress-free as possible when you're there. So Ryan, you actually contributed most heavily to this article. I know we collaborated a bit, but you were the primary author on this one. So why did you feel like this was a good thing to write about? Why is it relevant to our listeners, and why is it something you care about?
Well, this is one thing I care about because it's not something I'm naturally that good at. So in my household, my wife, she also works for a bank. She does accounting. She is excellent at spreadsheets, but this is something I actually have to force myself to try to do. And when you're planning something as large as a vacation, it's really important because yeah, people will use their bonuses for things like this, or they will have to dedicate savings accounts. It is difficult to do just on a whim. So it is important to plan ahead. And I wanted to take the time, use a little bit of my journalistic background to do some research, but also I'm kind of a tech person, and I wanted to take the opportunity to also dive into something a little bit new, which we'll talk about. But that's the uprise in using large language models, AI, ChatGPT, to help set itineraries and budgets. And you can even see in some apps you can book your stuff right through them, and it's really cool. And 4 or 5 years ago, this type of technology did not exist. And so it's really changed the landscape of how families plan for their vacations. And I thought that was really interesting to write about because back, 10 years ago when I was doing journalism full time, that wasn't the case. And this is very different times than that.
Yes, it's wild to me how much the travel industry as a whole has really evolved. Like not just the planning piece, which is what we're going to talk about a lot today, but also just different elements that didn't used to be a thing, 10, 20 years ago. Like now, even if you stay at a hotel room, sometimes your phone can be your room key. You don't need to get a physical key anymore. You can check in before you get there from an app. You don't have to visit the front desk. Like there's so many little things that didn't used to be an option that now technology has allowed for that makes it such a different experience than it used to be. So I think in some positive and some negative ways, but it's definitely a lot more efficient, I think, in a lot of ways. So that's fun to see how that's evolved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if people have come out of the pandemic, if they haven't traveled in a while, which more people are starting to now, but we're not that far removed from it. Like my wife and I, we have not taken a major trip or vacation since kind of some of those restrictions were lifted. But it's such a different time than it was before the pandemic because, you've got AI that has come into the ballgame now, plus the travel industry just evolved itself because of the pandemic. So it's very different. And I think people just now getting back out there again are gonna figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have 5 or 6 tips to leave you guys with today, and we decided to make this the formatting of this episode a little fun. So Ryan and I are going to kind of go back and forth and talk through each one. But I will start us off with the first one that we have for you all today, which is again a given, but set a total budget. This is going to help you plan effectively. And maybe if you're someone like Ryan and that's not your forte, maybe you have a spouse or a friend or you hire a professional to do that for you, but it's so imperative to set a budget. And when I say a budget, I mean every single aspect of it. So that's going to include traveling, lodging, food. You need a budget for souvenirs, any discretionary spending you're going to do while you're at your destination. And that's so important so that there are no surprises. You're not coming back with a credit card bill that you can't afford. You have it all planned out and budgeted to the dollar or within a reasonable amount ahead of time. So like we've talked about previously, that's another reason that it's advantageous to have a separate savings account for different buckets for things like that. So we highly recommend having a separate savings account for different goals, and this is a great one. So some financial institutions even offer accounts that are completely built around being used for the purpose of a vacation, or a fund like that. So we would really recommend that you have a savings account that's just for your vacations, and you're putting all of the money that you want and need in there, maybe a little bit from every paycheck, even, 5, 10, $20, and put it in there so that when you are doing your budget, you already kind of have that lump sum, to pay for it with, because we certainly wouldn't want to recommend you just put it all on credit and then have to pay for it later when you're also going to have to come back home and then get back to work and have all your bills and everything like that. So if you save up for it ahead of time and you have a really thorough budget, that's going to be super helpful, and it'll kind of get you off the ground when you're just starting to do the planning portion. So
I've seen this done a couple of ways. Obviously, you could do a regular savings account that draws an amount of interest, which is helpful. Just always, if you can, get your savings into something that is interest bearing. But I've also seen those types of vacation accounts where they don't release the money to you until a certain point in time, in which case then you can start to pay for the things for your vacation. And I think that's super useful to use a dedicated type of vacation restricted account for people who need sort of that help in this area where maybe they're not great at sticking to a budget. It is designed for that and helps set you up to be successful that way.
Absolutely, yeah. And along with that, of course, just do your research ahead of time, see how much the restaurants are going to cost, or maybe if there's a currency exchange that's going to have to be done, how much is that in US dollars? Like all of these are considerations to consider before you go. So, and then Ryan, you mentioned it a little bit already, but you've talked about ChatGPT or different AI platforms and how that can help possibly build an itinerary. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so technology has advanced to this point now where you literally can ask ChatGPT or Copilot or a lot of these AI now things that are available at your fingertips to plan you an itinerary. So put in your date when you're going to be somewhere if you want to find something cool that's local to do, and it'll return some really interesting results for you. I think I've even seen TV advertising around this concept now. That's something new that you can do if you're willing to trust it a little bit, because I think there's maybe a fair amount of distrust still, but for the most part, I think you can feel like it's pretty accurate. And then for anything you've got questions about, you could always turn to a travel agent who would be able to help you with some of the nuances of planning that stuff. So I would probably recommend maybe a combination of that, of using some AI to help you plan something fun. And then if you need sort of some confirmation that something's going to be legitimate in whatever it is you want to do at your destination, turn to a recommended pro and talk to a human professional in that way. But I think it's really cool. And the next trip I take, I'm definitely going to do something like that and see what interesting local stuff we can find. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with you as far as maybe striking a balance. I'm a little bit old school with stuff like this. So I would just say, of course, probably don't put all of your eggs into the AI basket. I mean, you still get that little
Sure.
pop-up that's like, some of this can be dated or inaccurate. And we're definitely not telling you to just completely blindly trust everything it says. However, it can certainly be helpful. And then, of course, still do your research. There's good old fashioned Google. You can do some searches. There's lots of travel planners that are available to help you. But I think utilizing all of your resources, including some AI, if that's something that interests you, why not just get, and that also gives you kind of maybe some different perspectives. Maybe there's a place that gets recommended to you by one person, but then online recommends something else, and you can kind of find about some options that you maybe didn't even know were available to you. So I think the more information you have and the more well-informed you can be, the better. It certainly doesn't hurt. And then tip number 3 we have for you guys is to be knowledgeable on kind of like some cost saving hacks. So some of this is common knowledge, but a piece of this that some people don't consider. I think sometimes when we get locked into like, we're going to take a week vacation, so it's going to start like Saturday to Saturday. However, if your workplace and your lifestyle allows a little bit of flexibility, sometimes it can be really advantageous to tweak that just a little bit. Like, for example, typically, and this is not a guarantee, but the majority of the time you can get a much, much cheaper flight if you go in the middle of the week rather than a weekend or even a Monday or Friday. So definitely look into that. If you're able to maybe fly out on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, sometimes you can save hundreds or even thousands of dollars just by doing that. So there's money you're saving just on your travel before you even get to your destination. Of course, this goes without saying, but there's going to be a pretty big gap in prices for hotels and different types of lodging. So I would say, depending on what type you have selected, whether that be a hotel or like an Airbnb or something like that, look for different ways to maybe save some money here and there. There are certainly some budget hotels if you're willing to go without certain amenities, and some people are not. And if you want to stay in a resort, completely fine. But that's just something you're going to have to budget for in the beginning. So if you are willing to give up maybe a couple amenities, maybe you don't need a full kitchen in your room, or maybe you could do two queens instead of one king size, but just little things like that can save money just right out the gate when you're doing your planning. And then another thing, if you're bringing children with you, there are some places where kids can stay or eat free depending on their age and where you're going. So if you are bringing, a child or multiple with you, certainly look into that and see where maybe you can save some money just by bringing your kids along and going to certain places or staying at certain hotels, certain restaurants. So those are all things. Do you have any, Ryan?
No, I'd say that's excellent advice. And tip number 4 kind of piggybacks right off of that to save food or save money on your food and entertainment. And I remember being a kid and this being kind of one of my favorite parts of vacation when the family was loaded up in a van and we were going to drive to Florida. Just having things like corn nuts and combos and some of those gas station snacks available. But if you plan for those ahead of time, so say you run out to a Sam's Club or Costco or something, and you get that stuff and keep it packed with you, you can save a little bit. Obviously, you can save on your, less frequent stops. There's a lot of ways you can save money on your food and your entertainment by packing your snacks. Like you said, if you're in your lodging, if you're staying in a place with a kitchen, cook in instead of trying to eat out every meal. You can definitely save a lot. I remember a couple times going to Orlando and getting familiar with their grocery stores because we would go buy food as soon as we got in so that we could cook some meals in like the condo we were staying in. And a lot of times it adds to the memories that as a family you'll make when you spend that time together, which I think is, I've always thought is a fun part of vacation growing up. So, cook at the hotel or an Airbnb now, things like that. And then take advantage of, parks and museums. Your destination, probably you're going for a certain reason, but when you explore the town a little bit, you see what else is available. I think that's when you really get a sense of a community and maybe the culture that they have there. So that's an instance where AI can be really helpful if you're looking for a free museum that's maybe doing an event or something that, would probably be difficult for you to look up, but it can return an answer for you just in seconds. And you'll know, like if you're going to New York City, give me a free museum that's off the beaten path. And I think you'll find some really interesting things to do that way and save a little bit of money in the process.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned the small things being what you remember, just to kind of echo that. I grew up with primarily a single parent. So we definitely had to live within our means. We didn't go on like lavish vacations when I was a child. And I would just say to anyone out there listening, maybe a parent that's stressed or someone that wants to do a big expensive vacation for an anniversary or anything like that. What you or your children or your spouse are going to remember is not the big fancy hotel that you booked or any of that. It's going to be the small little moments along the way. It's going to be the songs that you sing together in the car and all the little things that you think don't matter. That's what really stick out. So, of course, while you're there, and especially if it's somewhere you're only going once, do everything you want to do, check everything off your bucket list, but don't get so hung up on the details about thinking it has to be super, super extreme that you forget that the best part is kind of just the company and getting to travel somewhere and all those things. So I love that. And I completely agree. And then our final tip circles us back to the beginning. I love it when we wrap it up with a pretty bow. And it's just to keep your spending on track while you're there. If you create a budget before you go, but then you completely blow it out of the water shopping while you're somewhere, it was kind of for nothing. So you need to keep in mind, how much did I budget for souvenirs and for shopping and for eating out and discretionary spending while I was there, and make sure you're sticking to it. You don't want to stress yourself out either during vacation or when you come home by realizing like, hey, I really did spend above my means and now I'm going to have to figure something out. It's supposed to be a peaceful and relaxing time. And that's going to be a great way to do that, at least for the financial aspect, is to make sure that you are sticking to that budget that you set. And there are, again, some tools you can use to do that. There's different apps. And then additionally, like sometimes integrated in your online banking, like I know OMB's online banking has some of these features where you can set like spending alerts. So if you do spend to a certain amount or your balance falls to a certain amount, you can get alerts for that. You can set transaction alerts, different things like that. And it's also another tip that's important to do is to place alerts on your credit and debit card for one, so that way your financial institution knows if it's not a card you're supposed to be using and it was somewhere else, maybe it's stolen while you're gone, they can alert you to that, get it closed, get that taken care of, but also so that they don't shut you and your funds down if you're spending money overseas, but you didn't alert them ahead of time. So that's always a good rule of thumb as well, is to make sure you let your banks, your credit unions, whatever, know that you're going to be traveling so that they can place those alerts on your accounts and that they can know that nothing's wrong if you are spending money in places that you don't typically use your credit or debit cards. So that's good as well. But yeah, I just can't stress enough. Like once you've taken the time and the work to set this budget and plan this vacation, make sure you're sticking to it. It'll make it more enjoyable while you're there. It'll make it more enjoyable when you get home, but just good to keep that in mind and just stick to kind of what you set before you left. So
No, absolutely. That is perfect advice. So I think that's time for us to wrap it up then. We got through all 5 tips. I feel inspired. I'm ready to start planning my next vacation now that our daughter she's over 2 now. So I think we're ready to get her out into the world, go see a few things. Orlando is probably calling our name. There might be a trip to Disney in the near future. If you got to go somewhere this year, what are you going to pick? Where are you going?
that's so hard because there's so many places I want to go. I've always wanted to go to like a Fiji or Maldives, somewhere like that that's very tropical, and they have like the huts out on the water and like
yes. Oh,
fish
I
under
love
the
it.
floor, the whole thing. I just think that
Yes.
sounds pretty appealing, especially as we, as of recording, are entering our fall season, so I can see winter just around the corner. I'm already trying to figure out how I can get out of it. So that would be great for me.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's start planning your Fiji trip. We'll start planning my Orlando trip. But yeah, quick rundown though. Make sure you're budgeting ahead of time, that you're planning for these things so you don't get surprised by anything. Try a little bit of technology in your itinerary. See what cool things you can find that maybe you didn't know about because you used like a ChatGPT or a Copilot or something like that. Try some cost-cutting hacks. Try to keep it down a little bit. Like you said, fly midweek instead of during those peak times. If you can, travel off-season too. Maybe you don't go during spring break, but a week or two after. Usually you get a lot of discounts that way. And check out some of those discount websites too. Probably have some opportunities for you there. Save on your food and your entertainment by packing snacks and eating in instead of out. Also, get a little sense of community. If you hit up a local grocery store that's maybe right down the street from where you're staying, a lot of times you can find something interesting about your new surroundings that way instead of going to, the big popular restaurants all the time. And then while you're there, keep your spending on track. That's pretty important so that when you get back, you don't find yourself in a hole that you didn't anticipate. So anything I missed? Anything you want to add?
Nope, I think you covered all of it. Like you said, I'm pretty fired up. I feel like I need to hop on and see if there's any discounted flights here as we go into winter. So we'll just see where I end up next. But it was great to talk to you as always. I know we have some super exciting topics on the horizon for our next couple of recordings. So very excited to do those and get those out to you guys. But it's been great as always. And we will see you next month on the Money and More podcast. Bye.
Happy vacation planning.
The Money and More podcast is owned by OMB Bank. OMB and its affiliates do not provide legal, tax, or accounting advice. You should consult your legal and/or tax advisors before making any financial decisions.